Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Izian Amatullah binti Omar Bakri. My matric number 264651. I will present case 3, which is the small taste and touch of money and accounting policy decision. This case is about Aina, the accountant for MIM Holdings, that having a problem in order to recognize the injection of fund. All this started from investment that had been made by MIM. MIM is a special purpose entity or subsidiary that set up by its parent, which is UPC Berhad, to generate the income for UPC. When the investment was made, there is fund had flowed from UPC to support the MIM to make the investment. External auditor of MIM, MJ and Associates, advised Aina to recognize the fund as an equity since UPC Berhad is their parent, but external auditor of UPC Berhad, GA and Associates, did not agree with them. From the eyes of UPC external auditor, it should be recognized as a debt for MIM and not as an equity. On behalf of MIM, Aina should recognize whether the injection fund is equity or debt with a reasonable explanation, and if she agrees with UPC external auditor to recognize it as a debt, is MIM able to pay the debt while the company also have another debt to repay. The issue that we can see is whether the injection of funds should recognize as a debt or equity. Let's see how this problem happened. After external auditor of UPC state that the fund should recognize as a debt, the decision starting to bite MIM. It is because the investment had not been generating enough income yet, but the repayment of the debt from injection of fund had been key contention from UPC. When the investment decision was made, MIM actually did not have sufficient free cash flow. However, MIM managed to get the loan and secure it by cash deposit 23 million ringgit. The loan that had been made by MIM is 40 million ringgit and subject to profit rate of 15% per annum and payable in 240 months installment of 526,716 ringgit. But it's still not sufficient to make the investment, and finally UPC agreed to fund by injection 18 million ringgit to start the operation of the investment. The investment was financed through a mix of financing agreements such as Islamic Business Financing Term Loan and the injection of fund by the parent. During the preparation of the account, UPC debate that the recognition of injection the fund must be the debt for MIM and not equity. But for MIM view, it is equity because of they see the injection of fund usually additional capital funding by the UPC, and also this is not the first time UPC had done so. In addition, MIM is a SPE who generate income to their parent, and the investment also was accepted by UPC so that they recognize it as equity, not a debt. And finally, MIM recognized the injection of fund as a debt in 2017 as required by UPC after had a long conflict about what actually they should recognize this injection of fund. There are two decisions that Aina can do. First is to recognize the injection of fund as debt, and second, to recognize the injection of fund as equity. Let's see more about these decisions. What is debt? Generally, debt is a sum of money that one person is obligated to pay or money that is owed or due to be paid because of an express agreement. If MIM recognize the injection of fund as a debt, it will cause high leverage in leverage ratio. Leverage ratio are used to measure the amount of reliance a company has on creditors to fund its operation. The financial leverage of company is the proportion of debt in the capital structure of a company as opposed to equity. There are four types of leverage ratio, which are debt to asset ratio, debt to equity ratio, debt to total capitalization, and net debt to total capitalization. And for liquidity ratio, there are current ratio, quick ratio, and cash ratio. For this case, let us see the debt to asset ratio and current ratio if MIM recognize the injection of fund 18 million ringgit as a debt. The results show an increasing in debt to equity ratio from 2016 to 2018 if the company recognized the injection of fund as a debt. Even though there is also increasing in debt to equity ratio if MIM recognized as equity, but the increasing from the recognized as a debt is more than increasing from recognized as equity. So, the higher debt equity ratio indicates risk business to investors, while the lower leverage indicate business has lower risk of bankruptcy. So, MIM will facing high risk and unable to repay its obligation and can lead to bankruptcy because of if debt equity ratio is increasing, it indicates that company use more debt. As a result, MIM return on equity ROE can increase. It happened because the equity account is smaller as we using debt instead of equity. Therefore, it is important to be careful when investing in a company that has a high ROE. Besides that, for current ratio, it shows that in 2017 after restated, MIM may not be able to pay its short-term debt because of for every RM of current liability, MIM only has 86 cents of current asset available to pay for it. Besides high leverage ratio in MIM, the company also have to bear an excessive amount of loan. Initially, the company had made Islamic business financing term loan of 40 million ringgit. The loan also subject to 15% per annum of profit rate. So, the company need to pay back the loan together with the interest. For example, the loan that had been made in 2017 by MIM must be paid in monthly installment along with the interest rate 15%. So, if the company recognize 80 million ringgit as debt, it will further increase the amount of existing debt and will make the company higher in leverage ratio. In addition, the company also use the going concern assumption. It may be difficult for the company in the future if the company has a lot of debt because of the probability of MIM to survive is very low due to the ability to pay debts is declining, especially in 2017, and it is fear will causes MIM to stop the operation and unable to generate any income for UPC. Next, what is equity? Equity means the value attributable to the owners of a business. Other than that, it also can be defined as ownership of assets after liability and debt have been settled, or it can refer to stock or ownership of share in a public company. Let us see the debt to asset ratio and current ratio if MIM recognize the injection of fund 80 million ringgit as an equity. The results show an increasing in debt to equity ratio from 2016 to 2018 if the company recognize the injection of fund as an equity. Even though there is also increasing in debt to equity ratio if MIM recognized as debt, but the increasing from the recognized as a debt is more than increasing from recognized as equity. So, the lower debt equity ratio indicate low risk business to investor while and low risk of bankruptcy. When the company has low leverage, so it will guarantee MIM to continue the going concern assumption as the company has a chance to pay back the debt and continue their operation. It doesn't mean that the company did not have any debt, but MIM ability to pay the debt is higher compared to if they recognize the injection of fund as debt. Besides that, for current ratio, it shows that in 2017 after restated, MIM is be able to pay its short-term debt because of for every RM1 ringgit of current liability, MIM has RM1 ringgit and 33 cents of current asset available to pay for it. And lastly, from my perspective, MIM should and must recognize the injection of fund 18 million as an equity. Other than all explanation that I have mentioned earlier, this is not the first time UPC had done so. Before this, UPC always injecting their money to MIM for MIM use it to acquire and start the operation. It won't get any problem before this when MIM recognized it as additional capital that had been given from the parent to its subsidiary. Besides that, UPC also can get their income from this investment, and almost 90% of its revenue was internally generated by MIM. Not only that, fundamental principle of IAS 32 state that a financial instrument should be classified as either a financial liability or an equity instrument according to the substance of the contract, not its legal form. So, MIM have the right to recognize the injection of fund as equity because of there is no agreement that any injection of fund should be recognized as liability or debt. In MIM original article of Constitution, there is no any sentence that state the company include the preference share. When INA did change the recognition of injection of fund from equity to debt, they recognized the injection of fund as redeemable convertible preference share (RCCP). But suddenly, The issue of preferential getting to hit MIM because of the original constitution that led to Company Secretary of MIM to redraw the article of constitution in order to include the preferential. So, to avoid all problem and also inconvenient work, MIM can stick with the original constitution and recognize the injection of fine 18 million ringgit as additional capital from UPC, or they can issue ordinary share 18 million to UPC per head. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.